in the whole 6010.
Hello and welcome into Fantasy Focus Football. Today is October 4th.
Moving slow this morning.
That's all right, Field. That's all right. Today's podcast is presented by Geico. Switch to Geico and see all the ways that you could save. Daniel, Field, and Stephania here. Recapping Monday Night Football.
Yes, we are.
Talking Waiver.
Yes, we are.
All right,
You know
well,
what?
let's just...
I got to admit, I went
Yes,
to bed
we
early
are.
last night, around 7:30. Just to,
7:30.
Stop
I missed
it.
the game. Did something
Wow.
happen?
You know what? I don't believe you.
Of course not.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Kidding me?
don't
and the
believe
funny
you.
thing is, there are actually, like, after Sunday nights, Monday, I am like, it would be awesome to fall asleep at like 8:30 on Mondays.
Listen to me. I had a busy weekend.
Yeah, you did.
I took a nap yesterday so that I could be prepared. I could
Pre-game
be
nap.
prepared for the Monday night game, and it was so worth it.
I want to ask
I'm
this
just
question.
going to bask in the glow of this 49ers
Before
win.
we talk about football, what kind of a nap person are you? Are you one of those, like, I can take a solid 20-minute nap, get up, and I'm just fine? Or are you like 2 hours later?
So I can be both. But the problem is if you sleep longer than like 20 minutes, you can get into that coma. It's hard to come out of nap. So 20 minutes, like that 15 to 20 is the one where you can wake up and feel refreshed.
Well, it's my least favorite kind of nap, Stephania.
Well, it worked for
I'm a
me.
non-napper, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Are you a
non-napper? Days pass you by,
He's got
yeah.
the metabolism of a hummingbird. I say
That's
that all the time. He's like, Field's got energy all the time. He wakes up,
It's
he's
true.
fresh and bright. I wake up, I'm miserable. I need like 3 cups of coffee to get
Before
going.
you even
Yeah.
get started. I love it. All right, let's get going. Unfortunately, we are going to start with injuries. Big show today. Like I said, Monday Night Football. We have Waiver Wire, Squirrel Stock. We're going to get to a bunch of stuff. But Stephania, we're going to start with the Denver backfield, where unfortunately we have lost Javonte Williams for the season.
Yeah, and it's just a terrible injury. You know, it was there. Look, it's a multi-ligament knee injury for Javonte Williams. He's dealing with an ACL and an LCL. These combined injuries are tough to come back from. We've seen it right now. J.K. Dobbins had ACL, LCL, hamstring issues. They don't all look alike. You know, once they go in for surgery, they can sort out what other soft tissue or structural damage might be involved. But it's just a really, I was very sad for him because it's such a tough injury to come back from. There's no reason that he can't, but it's going to be a long road of recovery for him.
Yeah, young player. We had so much optimism about him coming into the season, both for redraft leagues and also for dynasty leagues. He's 23, and he's in his second year. So he's a very, 22, excuse me. He's a very young player coming into the league. We certainly hope this does not impact his long-term outlook. In the short term, we now know that there is no Javonte Williams for the rest of this season. Prior to his injury, it had been not exactly a 50-50 split like it was last year, but perhaps a bigger split between he and Melvin Gordon than some expected coming into the season when we thought there was a chance Javonte Williams would be the man. Now you think to yourself logically, like, okay, so no Javonte Williams, it must mean that Melvin Gordon is the man unto himself in Denver.
Until
One problem here. 2 things. The team did sign Latavius Murray from
they
the
did.
Saints practice squad to their active roster. And I'll talk about that in a second. But before we get there, Melvin Gordon has fumbled 5 of his last 44 rushing attempts.
That's not good.
5 of 44. That's an incredibly high number. That is just ridiculously astronomical. Think about this. Like, if we expect Melvin Gordon
15%.
to get 20 carries in a game, if that rate continues, it would be 2 fumbles per game. Here's the reality. That rate's not going to continue. You know why?
they're not going to allow it.
His leash is shorter than the shortest leash you ever imagined in your entire life.
It's weird, though. I was thinking about this. I was wondering, is this because Melvin Gordon's been a good football player in the league for a long time.
He still is a good player, yeah.
Right. So is this, it gets in your head, like it now every time you touch the ball, you're thinking about it. I mean, he needs to do one of those things where he carries around like the baby,
Like
and it goes with, like,
right.
Go to bed, go to meetings, go to protect the football at all times, because he's better than this. And I don't think it's that he suddenly forgot how to be a running back.
No doubt. And I think that, so the Broncos did show some optimism yesterday in the press conference from Nathaniel Hackett, suggesting Melvin's going to be kind of the guy and a big part of their offense still. I am going to plan for Melvin Gordon on Thursday night specifically to be the lead back for Denver. And my thinking is that it is going to be his job unless he continues to fumble the football. Mm-hmm. The minute he fumbles it once, he could be benched for an extended period of time. But I'm going to go into this game with the mindset that A, he's the guy, and B, the pressure that surrounds him right now because of those fumbling issues can go one of two ways. As Stephania suggested, sometimes it gets in your head, and you become more vulnerable, or it's a challenge. And I think Melvin Gordon's enough of a pro that he steps up to this challenge and holds on to the ball and holds on to the job. And the reason why I thought Latavius Murray was a notable signing from the practice squad of the Saints is you had to add somebody. But the Broncos could have gone one of two routes with their presumptive third running back. One route is you sign a guy who plays on special teams, that can do a bit of everything. And so even if you have him on your roster, even if he doesn't take any carries or any snaps as a traditional running back, you're getting value from he's a punt return man. He's on the punt return team. He's on the kickoff coverage team, whatever. Or you can go with the kind of back like Latavius Murray, more Adrian Peterson style, right? Mm-hmm. Zero value on special teams. The only value he has is basically north-south runner.
Yep.
So the fact that they went that direction makes me think that maybe not this week because it's a short week for them, but that maybe they want to preserve Mike Boone in the role that he currently has, which was an occasional running back, but also an integral part of their special teams. For those saying, like, this is Mike Boone's job because of Melvin Gordon's recent fumbling issues, I don't think that's going to be the case. Starting this week, I'll have Melvin Gordon inside my top 20, and unless he, literally and figuratively fumbles it away, I think he'll end up being around there for a chunk of the season.
And Latavius Murray looked pretty good.
Yeah.
He looks pretty good.
Looked better than Mark Ingram for sure.
Well, yeah.
Well, Murray, by the way, worth noting, has the history. George Payton, the Broncos GM, previously the Vikings assistant GM. Latavius Murray signed by the Vikings back in there, or drafted by the Vikings. No, signed by them back in the day.
It's always, there's always like that secret
like
sauce
6
in the
degrees of
background.
Kevin Bacon, right?
That's right. All right, next one up, Stephania. Cordero Patterson unfortunately left Week 4's game with a knee injury.
They're gonna have to throw to Kyle Pitts. This is my solution from this, and I'm sorry, Cordero Patterson, because this is not to make light of the injury, and it stinks for him because he's been such a workhorse for them. It's so much volume for Cordero Patterson, and clearly replicating some of what we saw him do last year. We don't know the details about his knee, but they placed him on IR, so we know that he is out for at least 4 games. Yeah. He did have a minor procedure, according to Coach Arthur Smith. So again, the details aren't available, but what it tells us for fantasy purposes is that he is out for at least 4 games.
So I said on Sunday morning that Cordero Patterson made me extremely nervous. And I guess it kind of goes one of two ways. I'm not trying to victory lap a guy getting hurt, but he ended up finding the end zone. So if you started him, you got enough production to make it worth your while. On the other hand, I knew that he was battling something. And all of a sudden, after playing just 16 snaps on Sunday, he's now got to have a minor procedure. So it's a bummer
he
for
came in
Cordero
on the injury
Patterson.
report. We knew that he wasn't 100%. Yeah.
And so this is just a huge bummer for a guy who's been so good for the Falcons. Mm-hmm. And this goes back to last year and just the reimagined role that he had. Everything about this player is likable. NFC Offensive Player of the Week in Week 3, helps him to win in Week 4 as well. Now out for 4 weeks. Worth noting that Damian Williams already on IR. That was an ab injury suffered back in Week 1, I believe it was. So he's going to miss at least another game, I believe maybe even 2. So in the meantime, we've got a backfield that involves some players that not many are familiar with, right? Tyler Algier, 5th round pick out of BYU, a guy who was a good college player and ran pretty well this past week as well, getting some opportunities. My guess is that he's the next man up, the first shot in this backfield with Caleb Huntley, a first-year player who I believe played at Kent State or Ball State. I bet Keith would know. One of those, I think it's one of those Ohio schools. Might have Bowling Green. And he also found the end zone this past week. My guess is it's those two guys for right now. Specific to Week 5, good luck. I know the Bucs just got thrashed by the Chiefs on the ground, but the Bucs, as we know, have been just a ridiculously dominant run defense
also,
for the past few years.
They were facing the Chiefs, and the Bucs were still reintegrating a lot of their personnel. Yeah. Here's the thing, though. Cordero Patterson is so unique in what he offers that no matter who's coming in at running back, they're not doing that.
Yeah. And Patterson's workload as a receiver had really dropped over the past couple of games, but he's super explosive, right? Tyler Algier is
still
like a
the
pit
threat,
bull.
though.
Yeah, exactly. But Tyler Algier is like much more of a bulldozer. So I think this week I'd probably end up fading both he and Caleb Huntley, who confirmed went to Penn State. Wow. Ball State. 3rd time's a charm.
They sound so similar.
I don't read well. Yes. Ball State is where Caleb Huntley went. So I think this week I'd be careful here. I do think Algier, and we'll talk about Eric Moody, is probably worth a waiver consideration, but a bummer. And for at least 4 weeks, no CPAT, which all injuries stink, right? But he is one of those players that was so easy to root for so many reasons. So this one really is no fun to see.
Cordero Patterson out for the next 4 weeks. The next 3 games are against top 10 defenses against running backs.
Yikes.
So while Tyler Algier, we'll get into him in the waiver wire, someone you need to look at, might be tough sledding next couple of weeks. Stephania, let's talk about Tua Tagovailoa. Obviously, concussion in week 3. Did not play last week in week 4. Are we going to see him here in week 5 by any chance?
He has already been ruled out for week 5, and Mike McDaniel's saying that they're taking everything day by day. It's too early to project a timeline that's long term. It was interesting that they ruled him out early in the week, but they did say that the subsequent brain scans that he had came back clean. So that's encouraging news, and obviously we are wishing him well in his recovery. That's the most important thing.
Absolutely, and that means that Dolphins are going to have Teddy Bridgewater under center to be able to run this offense field. Feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the better backups in the NFL, right? He started a ton of games. I'm not overly concerned about this. Again, it's Teddy Bridgewater played an extremely conservative offenses the past few stops for him, Carolina and Denver. As we've seen, he's got a track team around him, right? Like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle have unlocked a new level for Tua. I suspect that Teddy Bridgewater will be a serviceable quarterback as well here. He's actually not a terrible play in week 5 if you are, for some reason, in a pickle at your quarterback spot, if you've been riding them Matthew Stafford train,
I was just
or Aaron Rodgers train.
Russell Wilson
get
train.
there.
Russell Wilson train. We'll talk about that more throughout the week. One thing I was saying, Stephania is 1,000 times more qualified to talk about these things than I am. She was on GMA. She's been on sports. She's been on every show over the past 4
shout out to
days.
Stephania for being on Good Morning America. Thanks
how
for
cool
bringing
is
that
that?
out, Field.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Don't blink, but that was there.
So, no, come on. I will just say this. This is just me using my common sense hat. Not only I think I saw 12 players were pulled from games on Sunday for concussion, removed for the possibility of a concussion. Just use your common sense here. The league and teams, maybe the league will be urging teams to err on the side of caution as much as possible. You know, we have one other quarterback who left a game this past week, Brian Hoyer, due to a concussion, or a head injury, I should say, just in the interest of accuracy. If he has a concussion, just as an example, like, you got to figure a week minimum for some of these guys right now. And I know that Savanya always tells us these are nonlinear and they can recover at a different time. But if there was ever a time when you should suspect that teams are going to be extremely conservative,
heightened
But
sense of
I
awareness.
think here's what I'll say is that the review that was initiated after the Tua situation is still ongoing, that we do expect changes to the protocol. We've already heard reporting on that. What those changes are and what the language is, once it comes out, and the league has indicated that their joint review between the NFL and the NFLPA is expected to wrap up sometime within the next 1 to 2 weeks. Part of that investigation involved speaking with Tua himself, and that was supposed to happen at some point this week. So in the next 1 to 2 weeks, we'll have some more clarity, and at that point, we can dive into what the details are. But yes, I would expect to see some changes going forward.
All right, let's keep moving forward with Jonathan Taylor, Stephania, because he is taking on the Denver Broncos on Thursday. Yeah.
This is almost as painful as Kyle Pitt's situation.
Yeah, it's a tough one
Although
here.
Jonathan Taylor did have, he's certainly on the field, just fantasy wise, hasn't been as productive. It's been a slow start to the season, kind of like last year. And then this week he ends up with an ankle injury, leaving with an ankle injury. Now it is a lateral ankle sprain. I think there was some rumors floating around about it being a high ankle sprain. It's a lateral ankle sprain, sort of your more traditional ankle sprain. But keep in mind, they play on Thursday night. That is a short week. Just because it's not a high ankle sprain doesn't mean it's a significant injury. Remember last year, Saquon Barkley had a lateral ankle sprain, and that ended up really costing him the rest of the season. So in this case, Jonathan Taylor, we talk about how great of shape he keeps himself in. Those things actually help when you're looking on the recovery side. So I do think that they have left the door ajar for him to be available on Thursday night should he progress through the week, and they're comfortable that he can not only play but be pretty good at protecting himself from further injury. I, however, think it's more likely that we don't see him this week and probably next.
Worth noting that when you have Jonathan Taylor in your roster, you don't need to carry a bunch of other big, powerful backs, because not only is he the best at it, or one of the best, he has never, up until last Wednesday, missed so much as a practice in his life. Obviously, that means never missed a game in his life as well. So the Colts roster behind him does not exactly look like other Jonathan Taylors. Deion Jackson, practice squatter last year, I believe, for a good chunk of the year, went to Duke, bigger body. And then Nyheim Hines, who's on the active roster. He has 8 carries for 11 yards this year.
Yeah, Nyheim Hines is not just going to step in and take over that Jonathan Taylor role.
Phillip Lindsay on the practice squad. Wouldn't surprise me if he gets an opportunity for a revenge game on Thursday night. So you could have 3 guys stepping in for Jonathan Taylor, which to me suggests that like one of them could have value, probably just as a flex play. And because Hines is such a good pass catcher, he is the Colts back that if thrust into needing to grab one.
Upside play, yeah.
I'm not even sure it's that much upside. I just think maybe he has the highest.
He has more upside
of those 3 guys.
Yeah.
It's probably gonna. I mean, it's how often do you have to replace the best player in fantasy from last year? Not frequently. As we've seen with the Panthers in the past, you can't just expect Christian McCaffrey's replacement to be anything close to Christian McCaffrey. The same could be true in Indianapolis.
You're not wrong. All right, Stephania, a couple more here. Chris Godwin. We saw him back in action this week. What does it look like for him coming up in week 5?
Yeah, just keep an eye on the injury reports because there was some rumblings of an abdominal issue for him. But as far as the knee and the hamstring goes, good sign.
Yeah, all right. Great sign. He ran the second most routes in the NFL this past week. Second most of all players.
That's awesome.
He was back and he was playing a ton.
That's awesome. Let's talk about Daniel Jones because he stole 2 touchdowns from Saquon Barkley and then ended up hurting his ankle.
Yeah, he too had an ankle sprain. He comes out. Apparently he was testing it. He wanted to go back in. And Brian Daboll's like, you're not going back in. He said, once Tyrod Taylor went in, he said, well, if anything happens, can I still be available? And he said, sure. And then Tyrod Taylor left with a concussion. And so Daniel Jones comes back in, gimpy ankle and all. So, again, monitor the injury reports throughout the week for the Giants quarterback situation.
Yeah, we watched him run the Wildcat there for a little bit.
They had to. York,
which was interesting. All right, Stephania, any more injuries? How about let's talk about the Bills. We got a handful of them here.
Just keep an eye on this because Isaiah McKenzie left the game with a concussion. Jamison Crowder, I feel terribly for him on this 1-year deal. Ankle fracture. Who knows if he'll be back this season. So now we have a little uncertainty with their depth at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, and very little opportunity so far for Gabe Davis. Could mean that Stephon Diggs just has 90 fantasy points a game the rest of the year.
Yikes. Wait, 90 fantasy points a game the rest of the year?
Yeah.
I'd sign up for that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk Monday Night Football.
Let's do it.
Stephania, it is about time. We're going to start with the 49ers. Actually, let's start with the Rams.
Yeah.
Let's start where it's tough.
Let's finish on top.
A mess.
Field, I want to ask this question. Matthew Stafford has been someone that you were looking at as a back-end quarterback 1 through the first 4 weeks just because of what we thought this offense could be. It has been really, really bad for him. I think I'm at a spot. If you want to start benching Matthew Stafford and go with a streamer behind him, I'm good for the next couple weeks until I start to see more from Matthew Stafford in this offense.
No question about it, especially facing the Cowboys next week.
Yeah.
The Rams.
Gonna be tough.
How many touchdowns did Matthew Stafford throw last year? Do you call offhand?
Last year?
Yeah, 41. 41 touchdowns last year.
That's
okay,
good.
do the math. That's over 2 a game.
That's 2 a game.
All right, so you'd expect at least
1.5 a game?
Yeah, that'd be nice,
6
right?
or 8.
Yeah. How about last night? 0, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're a mess right now. They are a mess offensively right now. The offensive line issues are legitimate. Other than Cooper Kupp and another player we'll talk about in just a moment here, right now, it's hard to watch them. And I know that they face some relatively stingy defenses, and that definitely accounts for it. The Bills are really good, and certainly the 49ers are in the conversation for best defense in the NFL. But last year, didn't matter who they were playing. They found a way. So right now, Matthew Stafford is a sit until he gets back on track. And it's possible that with some of the other quarterbacks that have kind of risen up the ranks in fantasy football this year, that Matthew Stafford could just be replaced by somebody else that you have added since that time, whether it's a Trevor Lawrence, if he gets hot again, as an example of somebody that could be replacing Matthew Stafford.
Absolutely.
There was one series where he got sacked in like back-to-back plays.
Oh, dude,
it was terrible.
Brutal.
Yeah, I felt badly for him.
Obviously, no Andrew Whitworth this year has been a big problem for them. But the interior of the offensive line is just getting, between injuries and just, I would say, inadequate personnel, not a great strength for them right now.
Doesn't help the running backs either.
It doesn't. And here's the deal. Cam Akers looks terrible. I get it. And the numbers look terrible. And we had high hopes for him coming into the season. The offensive line is giving him absolutely no room to run right now. I can't make this only about the offensive line or only about Cam Akers. I think both sides bear some responsibility. But for fantasy football, we don't care about whether the offensive line scores points. We care about whether the running back scores points. And right now, you can't play either Rams running back. You can. You just can't do so confidently. It seems like there is less upside because not only are they unable to move the ball effectively on the ground, but right now, Akers has basically no passing game value that you can count on every single week. Henderson got you something in the passing game to the effect of 12 receiving yards last night. So these two running backs feel like voids at the moment. Again, that matchup against the Cowboys in week 5, not an easy one. They've been one of the best defenses in the NFL, especially at generating pressure. Good luck blocking them on Sunday.
You remember week 4 Squirrel Stock, I think I talked about how there's a lot of tough defenses coming up for these two running backs for the Rams. They have
nice job.
3 of the next 4 games are against top 10 run defenses, and they have a bye week in there.
Yeah.
So they're not even usable from that standpoint. Going to be tough if you are a Rams running back manager. All right. For these pass catchers, field, it is Tyler Higbee.
Yeah.
And let's stop trying to make Allen Robinson happen. How does that sound?
Stop bothering with it. I mean, Mike Clay is actually streaking through the streets of Bristol right now, victory lapping over Tyler Fulgham because Allen Robinson.
What do you do?
Let me revisit a take from this preseason. I said that Allen Robinson would either prove to be the biggest value in the NFL because at $15.5 million per year in an era where wide receivers are consistently now getting $20+ million, if he becomes a really productive wide receiver 2 for the Rams, that'd be a steal.
Yep.
Or he'd be the biggest overpay of the offseason. I think you guys know what the answer is so far, right?
Yes.
He looks cooked. It's
not totally fair to dump on him though, because those when you look at if you just look at the stats and you look at him in the end zone, 2 of those touchdown he's not going to get either one of those. Those were toss-up plays. Like, good luck getting him.
I don't know. I see a player who's struggling to generate separation, and I 2 catches for 7 yards. Like, it's just
here's the thing though, Stephania, because
to me, he's the garbage guy they throw to. He's not schemed for well in that offense. It's like Cooper Kupp, I trust. Tyler Higbee, I trust. I don't have but a Hail Mary. I'll throw it to Allen Robinson. And so
wasn't this Robert Woods last year? Didn't we bring this? Which one of you brought this up last week?
Yeah, I did.
I feel, we talked about, it took a couple of weeks for Robert Woods to finally.
I agree that Allen Robinson hasn't given me something that's electric yet, but I also don't think it's all on him.
Yeah. 85%
either way,
rostered.
You do not want him in your lineup. Period.
Not right now. The pass catcher you want in your lineup is Tyler Higbee if you're going to roster someone behind Cooper Kupp. And at the tight end position, talk about consistency. 10 catches for 14 yards, 10 catches on 14 targets for 73 yards, 3 straight games over 10 fantasy points. At the tight end position, that is freaking amazing.
Must start right now. Again, I mean, his target share is ridiculous.
Crazy.
His opportunities are ridiculous. The way that they are getting him the football is built to last, right? It's not like they're throwing the football way down the field. A lot of this is just dump and let him run after the catch. Solid enough athlete. Must start at the tight end spot right now. The only Ram besides Cooper Kupp that is an absolute must start, or at least a strong start, is Tyler Higbee. And I know Cooper Kupp, we don't need to waste too much time on it.
But we have to just acknowledge.
So do you guys know what the NFL record for most catches in a single season is?
149. Marvin Harrison?
Michael Thomas.
That's right.
Cooper Kupp, and he has an extra game, but still. He's currently pacing for 179.
Yeah, I believe it.
179.
He's the only one he throws to, except for the occasional Tyler Higbee.
You don't know why?
And you know what else? Remember in Red Zone this week, we had the Debo and Cooper Kupp, and you saw Debo, Cooper Kupp still had more yards.
I know.
Because the volume is so ridiculous.
It's absurd. He was the answer. Yeah. He was the right pick for number 1 overall this offseason. And I'm not trying to be a revisionist history person, but he was the right pick.
It's weird because I know we talk about this with Debo being a running back because he actually lines up at running back. Cooper Kupp is just as much a running back, even though he doesn't line up because of the way that they utilize him, right at the line of scrimmage, man.
Absolutely, Daniel. Good
He's so incredible.
All right, let's talk about your 49ers, Stephania.
Let's do it.
All right, I'm just going to let you handle this.
No.
You don't
Actually, the whole thing is that there's really not a lot to talk about for fantasy, right?
Not
really.
Jimmy Garoppolo.
Here's what I will say. We saw. Here's what I want to say about Jimmy Garoppolo for the people who are like, oh yeah, still making the mistake. So last year, after he hurt his thumb and then his shoulder, and he was still slinging the ball, obviously he had accuracy issues that were a little more. What's the word I want to say? He was even more compromised, right?
Sure.
So fast forward, shoulder surgery, and then no football in the preseason. None. Not even practice. Not throwing to guys. He was working with the athletic training staff on a side field. He first got his experience in a game post shoulder surgery. He's a thrower. When he had to take over after Trey Lance got hurt. So understand that Jimmy Garoppolo is still figuring out what it feels like to throw with this reconstructed shoulder. And I think that's part of why you're seeing sometimes he's putting way too much zip on the ball. You're like, whoa, that came in super hot, or it's high, or it's a little bit. those things are going to get better. And you saw it actually, I think, evolving some during the game last night. The fact that he was throwing to Kittle more last night and that they had he caught that in the end zone, you would have thought Kittle's production was a little bit better. He ends up having to fill in blocking a little bit more late in the game. But I do think there are better days ahead for Kittle. Jeff Wilson looked explosive. I like that. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a serviceable streaming quarterback depending on your situation in a deeper league, depending on who the matchup is.
Yeah.
Like, I think that will come. But yeah, fantasy purposes, it's kind of all what you expected. And Debo is just Debo. And if you haven't seen the play, go back and look at Seth Walder's tweet where he put the dots of Debo, because it is just the best thing to watch, because everywhere he goes, there's defenders around him, and then this little dot just keeps breaking away till it gets to the end zone.
Debo is incredible, so fun. He has just torched the Rams. Like, they're going to have nightmares about Debo for years to come. He's the only must start on this roster.
I love it.
I like Jeff Wilson, but
he's fine,
I want passing game usage from him.
But that's the thing, is that, like, he's fine, right? Didn't he play well last night?
It's not going to happen, though.
He played well last night, right?
Yeah.
He had 13 fantasy.
I know, and that's the thing.
Right? So,
gets
like,
in the end zone.
Yeah, you're like, wow, that was
He's
a great
going to
game
have
from
the
Jeff Wilson.
massive share of the running back carries, but they don't utilize the running backs.
So he's
the
a
same way.
low-end RB2 because of the way things have shaped up this year. Maybe more like top 25 running back, but he's got to find the end zone most likely to pay off. And it's just hard to score a touchdown every week unless you're probably Cooper Kupp. And then on Kittle, better years are going to come, no doubt. And I was thinking about this morning. There's no player where there's a bigger disconnect between his real-life football ability and his fantasy football output. George Kittle is a certified bad you-know-what. The guy is unbelievable. I'd take 22 George Kittles on my roster and go undefeated. He's incredible. Blocking like a freaking offensive tackle, runs after the catch like he's a hybrid wide receiver running back. But he's too important to the blocking, and he's, especially with no Trent Williams right now, like, the consistency is just not going to be there. There's probably going to be a week this year where George Kittle has 8 catches for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. You're probably not going to know when it's coming. You're probably going to have to continue to play George Kittle week in and week out. If you have him as your tight end, it's going to be frustrating at times. So this is, again, has nothing to do with George Kittle. I don't know if I can make any clear how I feel about him as a player, but for fantasy, that's why this is a very different game.
Really tough. Yeah. Last one, Brandon Ayuk. You saw under 13 fantasy points in all 4 games. I hope something gets rolling with Brandon Ayuk.
Talented guy, but in a run-heavy offense with Debo dominating the touches like he is, he's going to be a player that will have a few spike weeks. But until he generates more consistent momentum in back-to-back-to-back games, and it's going to be hard for us to rank him as anything more than like a wide receiver 5 right now.
He did throw a nice block, though.
Yeah.
Last night, I mean, look at there's one thing that Shanahan emphasized, that they all have to know what everybody's responsibilities are. They are good at that.
You are right. All right, we're going to come back and talk Squirrel Stock. But first, Field Yates.
See if I can find it, Daniel. All right, here we go. There we have it. Did you know that there are currently over 2.4 million podcasts in the world, including the one you're listening to right now?
That's a lot.
And it takes a team of people to help bring these podcasts together. There are so many people that make these things work, from producers that help with content, to a video team that helps us make us look good, to those that help on the social side of things to help distribute our product. Needless to say, hiring the right people for these roles was important. And whether you're hiring for a podcast or for your growing business, there's only one place that makes it easy: ZipRecruiter. And now you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/FFF. ZipRecruiter uses its powerful matching technology to find and match the right candidates up with your job. You can easily review these recommended candidates and invite your top choices to apply. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. So if you're a fan of this podcast and you want to try ZipRecruiter for free today, you need to remember our special URL, ZipRecruiter.com/FFF. Once again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/FFF. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
Geico asks, how would you love a chance to save some money on insurance? Well, of course you would. And when it comes to great rates on insurance, Geico can always help, like with insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and RV. Even help with your homeowners or renters coverage. Plus, add an easy-to-use mobile app, available 24-hour roadside assistance, and more. And Geico is an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways that you could save. It's simple. Go to geico.com or contact your local agent today. All right, now it is time for Squirrel Stock here, heading into week 5. I'm going to look at a few players I'm either stock up or stock down on. And let's start in Green Bay, where I'm going to start with Romeo Dobbs, who is stock up for me. Listen, Romeo Dobbs, Eric Moody is going to get to him a little bit later in the waiver wire column, but 8 targets in each of the last 2 games. He has a 23% target share in back-to-back games, 8 for 73 and a touchdown in week 3. 5 for 47 and a touchdown in week 4. Almost had 2 tutties on that big drop that he had in the end zone. He really looks like he's developing a rapport with Aaron Rodgers. I have him ranked as wide receiver 29 this week, going up against the New York Football Giants. He's at least a solid flex play here this week with upside to become something else. If he becomes Aaron Rodgers' guy towards the end of this year, Squirrel Stock up for me on Romeo Dobbs. Where are you at on Dobbs field?
The 2 most important numbers for Romeo Dobbs are 89 and 96. That's the percentage of plays that he played in week 3 and then week 4 after being around 45 or 50% in weeks 1 and week 2. He goes from being a part-time player to a full-time player. We talked all off season about the concept that if you're Aaron Rodgers' number 1 wide receiver, it's likely going to have some fantasy value.
Yep.
Now, the reality is that it won't have top 5 or top 10 or anywhere close to Devontae Adams level value, but there's going to be some level of value, good enough to be inside lineups consistently. And after a strong offseason, Romeo Dobbs has put it together in weeks 3 and weeks 4, a guy that as of the start of week 5 wasn't available in a lot of leagues.
Yes.
So a worthwhile waiver ad, which we'll discuss with Eric Moody in just a few minutes.
Absolutely. All right, stock down now, unfortunately, and I hate to do this for all of us.
No, you don't hate to do it.
But it's Kyle Pitts. Yeah. Here's the problem. Kyle Pitts, he's just inside my top 10. Less than 4 fantasy points in 3 of his 4 games so far this year. Here's the thing. His quarterback, Marcus Mariota, is 29th in pass attempts.
That's bad.
He's completing less than 60% of his passes, and his incompletions, he has a 20% off target rate. When he's missing, he's not missing well. And how many touchdowns do you think he has on the year?
Mariota or Pitts? I can answer the one on Pitts pretty easily.
I know.
His quarterback, Marcus Mariota.
Pitts, same as me, yeah.
Only 3 touchdowns, 3 passing touchdowns through 4 games for the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah.
You know who they get this week? The
Bucs.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah.
Squirrel Stock down for me. He is still a starter for me. He is tight end 9, but he is getting to the point where the risk is going to start getting to. I might start looking at some streaming options. I'm going to trust it one more week because of where I drafted this guy. But Stephania, where are you at on Kyle Pitts here in week 5?
Depressed.
Yes.
I mean,
That's the
I'm
answer.
depressed
That's the answer.
because he's my dynasty tight end.
Yeah.
I have him in several of my redraft leagues because we know what a great athlete he is. We know what the potential is. We started to see it last year. But they're not looking for him. And even when they try, they're still not looking for him that much. I mean, Drake London is bigger target than Kyle Pitts. And I just don't understand it because he can do things to improve their offense. It's very confusing to me. If it was a simple relationship issue with him and Marcus Mariota, like we talk about in Green Bay with them developing trust, it'd be one thing. But it's like he's not even really involved in what they're scheming up offense-wise. They face Tampa Bay, like you said. I don't love it. He's too good of an athlete. This can't go on.
I know.
So for the season, I am not like I'm not getting rid of him.
Nope.
I'm not. But I am with you that if Tyler Higbee was
Thank you. I was just going to say
yeah.
right now, if someone offered me Tyler Higbee for my Kyle Pitts,
Yes.
I'd probably do it, which sounds unfathomable.
because over in Los Angeles, they ignore Allen Robinson.
Correct,
and
as we
Tyler
discussed.
Higbee gets all
Yes,
the
yeah,
targets.
I'm with you. So
I mean, there's a trade to be like if you're desperate, you don't have time, you don't have the patience to wait and see if they discover Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, if you're 1-3,
I'd be
0-4,
looking for Tyler Higbee.
Yeah, it's an example of a guy that makes sense as a trade commodity that you would have never imagined.
Never.
To begin the
Crazy.
Brutal.
All right. Stock up. Another wide receiver here. I'm going with Cortland Sutton, friends. Cortland Sutton is stock up for me.
Yeah.
It's the eye test. Through 4 games, he clearly looks like Russell's guy, right? You look at him,
He does.
7 targets in every single game this year. He has at least 11 fantasy points in every single game this year. And he has 16 or more fantasy points in 3 of his 4 games. Even when Russ and the Broncos have struggled, he has been consistent within this offense. Now, unfortunately, we also get the Javonte Williams injury, so we're going to see how that's going to factor into this offense and if that means anything for these pass catchers. But this week, I have Cortland Sutton ranked as wide receiver 13 versus a stingy Colts defense. He has become a consistent wide receiver 2 for me, regardless of where the Broncos are at. Stephania, where are you at on Cortland Sutton for week 5?
I agree. I mean, it's really nice to see a guy who had a major injury last year and actually 2 years ago. So last year was his first year back and did pretty well and just continues to evolve back to the guy he was and the potential he had before he had that injury. Obviously, Russell Wilson trusts him a great deal. I agree with you. And he seems to be the preferred target. You know what's interesting is I had heard rumblings that he would be, look at him as the preferred target for Wilson because that was showing up in training camp. And I thought, Jerry Jeudy's so talented he's such a great route runner that he is going to make life easy for Russell Wilson, and that could shift. It really hasn't. Hasn't.
No,
so
really
I'm
hasn't.
with you.
I'm like it. Stock up on Cortland Sutton for this week. All right, and last one here, Fields Yates.
Yep.
I am stock up, and I hate to do this. On the New England running backs here in week 5. Do you want to know why?
Playing your Lions, yeah.
That's right. Rich Rebar on Twitter. 35.1% of rushing plays against the Detroit Lions have resulted in either a first down, so you're extending drives, or a touchdown. That is the highest rate in the NFL. The Detroit Lions have given up at least 25 fantasy points to every single team they have played against at the running back position.
Yeah.
You look at Ramondre Stevenson and Damian Harris this week against this weak Lions defense. Stevenson is running back 15 for me. Damian Harris is running back 19. At a spot where you've been trying to figure out which one of these guys do I play every given week, this week, I am playing both of the Patriots running backs.
Yeah, Dan, you'll be at the game on Sunday. Well, you're rooting your Lions on fervently, I am sure. But if it was just one running back for the Patriots, that one running back, whether it was Stevenson or Damian Harris, would be inside the top 10 this week because not only are they facing an opponent that has struggled to stop the run, the Patriots have run the football effectively. They did so this past Sunday against the Packers. They've got a good offensive line. They've got 2 good backs. And while Stevenson has been more productive in the passing game, we have seen Damian Harris get involved in the passing game as well. Last thing, assuming, and right now it's too soon to know for sure, but if Bailey Zappi is starting again, while he impressed all of us, and maybe he will air it out a bit, still, rookie quarterback making his first start in what will be his 5th ever NFL week, you would think the team would be more likely to run the football just a tad more than they would if they had Mac Jones or Brian Hoyer under center.
Yeah, and I think that when you take on a Lions defense, you're allowed to just do that if you have a rookie under center because it's been tough for us to stop them.
It's right now the defense for the Lions is I don't even know what is worse than an Achilles heel because they're leading the league in the NFL, they're leading the league in scoring and leading the league in points allowed. That is hard to do.
35 points for every single game for the Detroit Lions, 35.3 points against. There are 70 points being scored on average in Detroit Lions games. Start every fantasy player that you can against the Detroit Lions. All right, let's take one more look at Squirrel Stock for me this week. Oof, that's a good-looking list, Field.
It sure is, Daniel. Well done by you.
All right, coming back out and joining our good buddy Eric Moody to talk Week 5 waivers, get you set up for everything that you need. Eric, how you doing, big guy?
I'm doing pretty good, but you know what? I was actually thinking, Dopp, about how are you doing after T.J. Hawkinson's phenomenal performance?
I gotta tell you, boy, T.J. Hawkinson, you know what he does? I'm gonna pull my hair down while we're doing this.
Let your hair down.
Come on.
He let his hair down in the war
I got
room
so
and
many
shaking
things.
it out because he was trying. He was feeling it.
Guys.
He was feeling.
You know what the problem is?
It didn't
hair's
work.
so long,
I got too much hair now.
It would have been a good bit if it had just come out.
What do you mean would have been a good bit, Stephania?
Now he's gonna get it. Oh, here we go.
Letting his hair down.
Yeah.
That's right. Still never been seen in the same place as T.J. Hawkinson.
Until Sunday.
Everyone wonders. Everyone wonders.
We just need to make it a little blonde.
You know what T.J. Hawkinson does? He keeps touchdowns in his hair. Did you guys know that?
Did not know that, but that is awesome. I didn't know you could do that.
Don't ever cut it.
That's true. All right. Speaking of T.J. Hawkinson, though, Eric Moody, let's talk about Week 5 waiver wire and starting at the quarterback
What a
position.
segue that was.
This was great, right?
Speaking of T.J. Hawkins, let's talk waiver wires, right?
Yeah.
That works. I'm here for it.
You ready?
Yes.
Because T.J. Hawkinson's quarterback leads the waiver wire for you this week, Eric Moody.
Hey.
Let's talk about Jared Goff, baby.
Yes, Jared Goff does, and hey, I'll be candid. I was very surprised watching this performance because I was sitting there thinking, okay, Jared Goff is here, doesn't have DeAndre Swift, doesn't have DJ Shark, doesn't have Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think they're just going to ride Jamal Williams, hopefully to a win. But, he was out there chunking the ball. And one thing about Goff is that he's averaged so far this season 37 pass attempts and 22 fantasy points per game. And so I think at this point, he should be rostered in nearly all leagues, especially if you're in the 2-quarterback Superflex league. If he's still out there, just change that. But he's actually at the point now where I believe he's a weekly high-end QB2 with QB1 upside. He's got great protection from the Lions' offensive line, and he's out there chunking the football, and good things are happening.
Chucking it around for sure. The Detroit Lions, I said this a little bit earlier in the show, but in case you didn't hear it, the Detroit Lions are scoring on average 35 points every week. They're giving up on average 35.3 points every week. There are over 70 real NFL points being scored in Lions games. That means that Jared Goff is likely going to have to sling it to your point. Not a bad pick here. I love that one. All right. At the running back position, obviously we saw Javonte Williams go down. Unfortunately, we lost him for the rest of the season. But what are you looking at for Mike Boone here off the waiver wire?
Yeah, and this is such a difficult situation. It's been multiple curveballs that have been thrown in, and I'll kind of build up to that. But Mike Boone, just given the situation with Williams going down, he's a must-add for this week. You've got Melvin Gordon that's there who can't seem to hold on to the football. I believe you look at Gordon, he's now fumbled 5 times in his past 44 rushing attempts over the last 5 games. That's not good. That's not good at all. And the coaches are hyping him up. Hey, he's a veteran player. He's done this before, etc. But I think the leash is going to be short with Gordon. So that gives someone like Mike Boone, a chance to come in, kind of make a name for himself, and absorb some of the touches. Looking back at Javonte Williams, like over the first 3 games of the season, he averaged 18 touches a game. And so the opportunities are there for Boone to be very successful. But then I'm sitting there yesterday afternoon, Monday afternoon it would be, and I'm sitting there looking at the news, and I got the alert that pops up where it's like, okay, the Broncos have added on Saints practice squad running back Latavius Murray. And part of me as a Saints fan, I'm thinking, well, they got rid of him already? I guess that means Kamara is coming back. But then on the other side, I'm like, they're going to make this backfield more complicated. But here's how I view it, Dopp, is that, okay, you've got Boone, you've got Gordon. They're going to be the dynamic duo, the tandem. But if one of them starts to slip up or kind of fall down, whether it's production-wise, like with their yards per carry,
more fumbles from
Melvin mental
Gordon.
Errors,
Yep.
if they fumble the football, that's where I think Latavius Murray could come in and kind of take some of that opportunity share away. But to bring all that together, I do like Mike Boone this week. Everyone should pick him up.
All right. For the wide receiver position, Eric Moody, last week we saw Michael Gallup come back, play in his first game so far this year. Was there enough from Michael Gallup that you think he's worth a waiver ad here in week 5?
Oh, absolutely. I'm like, Gallup's got a pretty robust body of work with the Cowboys. And he looked great. He looked great on Sunday. I was sitting there surprised they had him play that high number of snaps. He operated as the number 3 receiver behind CeeDee Lamb and Noah Brown. But, he caught a touchdown, had a couple of receptions. And so, I think things will continue to trend up. One thing about Gallup that fantasy managers should know, looking at his career, he's played 31 games in his career where he's gotten 6 or more targets. And he's averaged 69 receiving yards and 14 fantasy points per game in those games. And so I look at Gallup as someone that could be a weekly flex option for fantasy managers in this Cowboys offense. He obviously has upside for much, much more. We should get Dak Prescott back soon. I know Mike McCarthy mentioned that, hey, he'd like Dak to have a full week of practice before running out into the field in a regular season game under center. But I do like Gallup. If you need a wide receiver, I pick him up.
Yeah, absolutely. Gets the Rams this week. We just watched what Debo and that 49ers offense did there. If Dak comes back, especially. Even if Dak doesn't come back, Cooper Rush has been playing so well. The opportunities potentially for CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup in this passing offense could be big. Could be big here this week. All right, at the tight end position, Eric, bring it home for us. Talk about the tight end that you are grabbing off the waiver wire in week 5 if you need somebody.
I think about Dopp, how desolate this position is. I'm kind of shedding some tears for Kyle Pitts. I think a lot of fantasy managers have. But if you're in a situation where you have a Kyle Pitts and you're not blessed enough to have Mark Andrews or Travis Kelce, I would look at Tyler Conklin. And it was a couple of things I was watching this week, or last week I would say, to see what took place. For one, how is he going to mesh with Zach Wilson? And then also, like with tight end CJ Uzomah, is he going to take away targets or snaps from him? And Conklin, passed all of my tests. And so I do like Conklin as I would say a weekly kind of mid-range tight end 2, but he does have the upside to finish as a high-end tight end 2 or even a low-end tight end 1. I just think he needs to get the targets, and he does have a lot of competition for targets in this plethora of playmakers will say that they've surrounded Zach Wilson with in New York. But one thing about about Conklin. I'll kind of leave you with the stat here. He's had 8 career games where he's had 7 or more targets. In each of those games, he's averaged 12.5 fantasy points. And again, just given how desolate the tight end position is, I'm like, if you can get 10-plus points from a tight end, I think you're going to take it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 10 or more. Here's my only fear with Tyler Conklin. 10 or more fantasy points and 7 or more targets. And every single game so far this year in which Zach Wilson has not started at quarterback. With Zach Wilson this week in week 4, it was a little bit different. You watched Joe Flacco utilize him the first 3 weeks more. I want to see the way that Zach Wilson is potentially going to use him. But in this offense, they should have to throw a ton, Eric, which means he is going to be utilized, someone that you can definitely look at. All right, so we talked about Jared Goff. We talked about Mike Boone. We talked about Michael Gallup. And we talked about Tyler Conklin, the tops of your waiver wire positions. If for some reason you cannot grab any of these guys, do you have any backups that you like behind Jared Goff? Are there any other quarterbacks here in week 4 in case you can't grab him off waivers?
Yeah, and so I cannot wait to talk about this player, but Kenny Pickett. I love Kenny Pickett, and I love it because I'm watching Mitch Trubisky back there, and I'm just like, this guy he's not throwing well from the pocket. And I think we'd all agree is that in order to succeed at the NFL level, I'm like, you have to be able to consistently throw from the pocket. And you look at Trubisky, a high percentage of his passing yards were from outside the pocket. But then you got Kenny Pickett that's there. University of Pittsburgh's own Kenny Pickett for where, I'm like, he was exceptional from the during his senior year of college. And looking at his numbers, I was like, I just cannot wait for him to give him a shot to see how he performs. And so he was out there in the second half on Sunday. I think he'll be a lot better this week, having a full week of practice, knowing that, hey, I am the starter. And it's just a different way that you prepare where you know you're the starter going in. And so I think we'll see a different Kenny Pickett in this game. But he showed us some glimpses of what's possible. And he's got a great supporting cast. Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, we know he has rapport with him. Chase Claypool, Pat Freiermuth, and of course Najee Harris. But one thing about Pickett that I'm excited about is his rushing ability. Scored 2 rushing touchdowns. And here's the thing. We talk about backup quarterbacks all the time. We kind of know what to expect. I'm going to use Teddy Bridgewater as an example because that's a recent scenario where he's elevated to the starter in the short term, and for where we kind of know what to expect from Teddy Bridgewater, but we don't know what to expect from Kenny Pickett. Mm-hmm. We could be having this conversation in December, Dot, where it's like, you know what? Kenny Pickett was the waiver wire pickup of the year. And so it's possible. So if you're in a 2-quarterback league or Superflex league, yeah, pick him up.
Absolutely. I love being able to see him get in the end zone with his legs, especially because I took Najee Harris not getting a touchdown in red zone on fantasy football now. So those 2 Kenny Pickett rushing touchdowns were music to my ears. I love being able to see that. Do want to say this really quickly. 4 games prior to his week 9 bye, they get Buffalo, Tampa, Miami, and Philly. So there are some tough games coming up for the Pittsburgh Steelers here. All right, at the running back position, you mentioned I think it was Mike Boone. That's right. You mentioned Mike Boone. If there is another running back, we talked about Cordero Patterson going down. Unfortunately, going to miss the next 4 weeks here at least. Do you like Tyler Algier as a potential streaming option, even if you don't like him this week?
No, I do like Tyler Algier. I've liked Tyler Algier for many months now. I've been very public about my admiration for Tyler Algier on social media and Twitter and a lot of platforms. And one thing about Algier is that he's got the profile of a 3-down back at the NFL level. He's got the size, he's got the athleticism, the toughness, the nastiness that I like in a running back. And I just think about Cordero Patterson. I'm like, the highlights are fun. They're great. I'm surprised the Falcons gave him that many rushing attempts, but it's I just felt like he wasn't going to last like this entire season if they kept that up. And he had the knee issue last week, ultimately now on IR, which gives Algier an opportunity. So I think he'll run with it. So I would prioritize Algier if he's available in your league. And one thing about Algier is, like, at BYU, I'm like, he was very productive. Looking at his career, he had 17 games where he had 15 or more touches. He averaged 140 total yards in those games. And I think that skill set and that production could potentially translate to the NFL level. So pick him up.
Yeah, absolutely. This week, though, could be tough. Gets the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you know how they are against the run. But a long-term option at running back in case Cordero Patterson misses any. Even if he doesn't miss more time, just the fact that he's missing these next 4 games, definitely worth rostering. All right, at the wide receiver position, I got 2 names here, and let's close it out with these 2 guys. In George Pickens and Romeo Dobbs. 2 seemingly high volume, I shouldn't say high volume, but maybe potentially with Aaron Rodgers, we've watched Romeo Dobbs be more high volume. And with Kenny Pickett under center, maybe we see more George Pickens. I love both of these guys. Talk about them both here for the Week 5 waiver wire.
Yeah, I'd say looking at Pickens is that I think the rapport with Kenny Pickett is huge. And so here's what I could see happening for where Kenny Pickett ends up surpassing Chase Claypool on the depth chart and ends up getting more targets. And so I think George Pickens is good enough, to make that happen. And we saw what the production that he had in the second half of Sunday's game once he was catching passes from Pickett. But I do like Romeo Dobbs quite a bit. I know Aaron Rodgers kind of gets a bad rap for his treatment of younger receivers, giving them the glare. He's got so many social media worthy looks and memes. It's just getting out of control. But I digress. But one thing about Dobbs, in his rapport and chemistry, with Rodgers, I look at these two in that, over the past two games, you look at Dobbs. He's got 16 targets and he's scored 13 or more fantasy points in each game. Could have scored more on Sunday if he could have, maintained control of that touchdown pass. It was a beautiful pass by Rodgers, by the way. But he still has confidence in the rookie, and I think the chemistry will only get better from here. And so I'm surprised that Dobbs is still available in as many leagues as he is right now. So I'll pick him up.
You and me both, Eric Moody. I am quite surprised that he is available. However, make sure that everyone follows at Eric N. Moody on Twitter. That is correct, right? Eric N. Moody?
Yes, it is. Eric N. Moody.
Crushed it. All right, follow Eric. He does so much for us. Eric, so great to be able to hang out with you. Thanks for doing waivers for us. And next week, I'm excited. Week 6 waivers. You're going to be back with us then next Tuesday. We'll see you then, buddy.
All right. Take care.
All right, Field and Stephania, we're going to come back and we're going to actually maybe redraft.
Yes, we will. But before we do that, Daniel, let me tell you about Body Armor because I am thirsty. And fantasy football season is here, and that means more of what you love, the teams, the rivalries, the stats, trash talking your friends. This season, your favorite players are hydrating with Body Armor Sports Drink on and off the field. Your favorite fantasy stars like Kyler Murray, Christian McCaffrey, CeeDee Lamb, they all rely on Body Armor to get them to the next level and perform at their best and give you the trash talking points you need. And hey, this fall is a great time to pick up your game too. Made up with potassium-packed electrolytes, antioxidants, no artificial sweeteners, flavors, or dyes, and coconut water. It's a great time to grab some Body Armor Sports Drink for yourself. Everybody is focused on staying active, and hydration is an important part of that. Body Armor Sports Drink, more than a sports drink. Now through November 1st, buy any one Body Armor product at your local convenience store and scan the QR code in-store to enter to be one of hundreds of winners to receive $100 in DraftKings prizing. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Open to residents of U.S. 21 and older.
Hey guys, football season is here and nothing beats seeing your favorite team live. Not only does Vivid Seats have great NFL ticket prices, they're also the official ticketing partner of ESPN. And with Vivid Seats rewards, when you buy 10 tickets, you get the 11th free. Download the app or visit vividseats.com today. Vivid Seats. Life happens live. Receive a reward credit equal to the average price of the 10 tickets purchased, excluding taxes, fees, and processing costs. See vividseats.com/rewards for terms and conditions.
I got A's on live reads all the way across today. You guys crushed those.
Thank you.
I gotta be honest.
Stephania.
If I'm being
Wow.
honest.
Okay. All right. It's never. A's not even good enough.
I know. Stephania is her educational threshold is so high that an A is I could do better.
It's
Meanwhile,
it actually brings down her GPA.
Right, meanwhile, I'm okay, I'll take the A, and you have 0 seconds to change your mind because it's the last A I'll ever get. So thank you so much for giving me this moment of glory.
All right, let's jump in the fantasy time machine for the final 10 minutes that we have of the show. We are a month into the season, and we have seen a lot of players both overperform. I shouldn't say overperform. Perform, exceed their expectations, but also very much underperform. So let's start.
Do you want to do 1, 2, 3 snake draft? What do you want to do?
We're not going to draft. I'll tell you what. Let's throw up. I believe we got a full screen.
Okay.
And let's look
at
what the first round could have been. Our producers went through and they decided they wanted to redo the first round. So I'm going to start with the top 3 here, Field. In case you're not watching, we've got Cooper Kupp at number 1 overall. Saquon Barkley would be the number 2 overall pick, and Stephon Diggs at 3. That is very different than the way that we started this. Cooper Kupp, the only guy still in the top 3 after a month into the season, Field.
And I suppose that Saquon has an argument just because running backs are harder to find than wide receivers, but I just think the guaranteedness, if that's a word, the guarantee of Cooper Kupp is just too difficult to ignore. And again, to 179 catch pace right now. Not only is he crushing it, He has a larger sample size. He's
So we're
just
in
a better
agreement.
bet.
I mean, we're in agreement with the redraft.
Cooper Kupp.
being
I would
number
say Cooper
one
Kupp
for me.
number one is unquestionably the right pick.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I meant. Like, there's no doubt that he's number one.
Yep.
And so often we've gone with a running back number one. I think it's because at that position, we're looking for the guy who can be a difference maker because so few
Yep.
running backs really are. This year we have, what did we say? We were talking about like 2 running backs you can count on.
Yeah.
And Saquon Barkley, I am not upset at where we had him coming into the season because we still needed to have it all bear out. We needed the proof. We thought he could be this guy.
Sure.
We weren't sure. And that's
Well-
where it was baked into the draft position. But now, number 2, he is tied for the team lead on his team with 15 receptions. He is going to continue to catch the ball a lot because they're so
have
thin
no wide
at wide
receivers.
receiver. He's involved in almost all of the play. I mean, he's on the field all the time,
Yeah.
and he's stayed healthy. He leads the NFL in scrimmage yards with 570.
Well, I think, by the way, he's been amazing. So happy for him. It's really perhaps the defining story of fantasy football so far. The only thing that we need to see, and this applies to everybody, but because of his recent history of injuries, more so to Saquon, is that it's great 4 weeks in. We're hoping that we're having the same conversation 8 and 12 and 17 weeks into the season, which, again, that applies to everyone. Even Jonathan Taylor, who was made of Teflon, is now hurt, right? But because of Saquon's injury history, that's part of the reason why he fell lower than where he probably should have gone upon further review.
Right, but I think, like, to me, and maybe I'm not getting the exercise right, but to me, this is like where I would consider drafting them now. And to me,
No question. No, he
he'd
should
be
go at
my
number 2.
first running back.
Yeah,
off the
because
board.
of what I know. Like, if I know what the first 3 weeks, 4 weeks, because we're going into week 5, look like, he is my number 1 running back off the board right now. So
3 through 5, we've got Stephon Diggs, Derrick Henry, and Justin Jefferson. 2 guys that I think were basically up in that conversation around draft time, and Derrick Henry and Justin Jefferson. But Stephon Diggs has leapfrogged them with that Bills offense. In spite of what was an awkward week 4, his first 3 weeks, Stephon Diggs has been unreal.
And this is where I think I have some disagreements. I think there is an argument, perhaps, for Christian McCaffrey all the way up to pick number 3.
Wow.
So some really encouraging signs in week 4, had 9 catches. He's playing so many snaps. And the idea that they were going to scale back his work, even during a week in which he came in pretty iffy to play, it's not going to happen. And I know this is not something that we can guarantee for the rest of the season, but Matt Rule's fighting for his job right now. Every week is a survival week for Matt Rule. And I'm not saying he's going to compromise Christian McCaffrey, but if he has to lean on Christian McCaffrey more like he has in the past, then what maybe he should be doing because of how Christian McCaffrey's dealt with injuries over the past couple of years, it's just not happening right now. He's going to play him a ton. So I think CMC belongs in that conversation for number 3 overall. There's a player not even on this panel that I think could be in the conversation for number 3 overall as well.
We haven't even gotten through. All right, so let's look at 6 through 10, because at 6, we've got CMC. At 7, Nick Chubb, who I think is running back 2 so far on the
Awesome.
year.
Yep.
It's been fantastic. Tyreek Hill has over a 30% target share. Devontae Adams at number 9, and then Mark Andrews rounding out the tight end position. He has been fantastic. Other than
Yes
last
and
week,
no. I mean, here's the thing about Mark Andrews is that he's not even the highest scoring tight end.
which is crazy.
Right. So I think if you're going to have Mark Andrews at number 10, then Travis Kelce either has to be
11.
or 9, right? I mean, Travis Kelce is outscoring him right now in terms
Still
of
a coin
catches.
flip.
Yeah, it's close to a coin flip. I just think the Travis Kelce should be mentioned there. Did you guys see what Tyreek Hill said yesterday?
Oh yeah,
this was awesome.
About if he was still going to put up the same yards.
Yeah, our Marcel Louis-Jacques, who covers the Dolphins, the NFL Nation here, team at ESPN, asked Tyreek Hill basically about his expectations for his production with Teddy Bridgewater as opposed to
Tua
Tua
Tagovailoa.
Tagovailoa as his quarterback.
And his answer
Tyreek
was
Hill
phenomenal.
looks Marcel in the eyes and goes, I could put up numbers with you at quarterback.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
amazing moments. I wish there was video
Little
of
did we
it.
know that Marcel Louis-Jacques was actually an NFL caliber quarterback.
Well, I mean, he's
so
an
it's
athletic
possible.
guy.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
it could be, but it's just a great line there. Hilarity ensues. So there are a couple names that I thought deserved to be in that top 10. I do believe that Travis Kelce should be mentioned if Mark Andrews is mentioned. And I think Austin Eckler needs to be mentioned here.
Yeah.
I know it feels like it's been a disappointing start to the season, but over the past 3 games, Austin Eckler has at least 6 catches. I know the rushing efficiency was poor through weeks 1 through 3, but if that picks up, even if it's not as good as it was in week 4, if he averages 4.5 yards a carry going forward, and he gets 6 catches in a game, hello? I mean, that's over the course of 17 games. It's 100 catches for Austin Eckler, who could easily reach close to 850 receiving yards in a season. That to me is first round consideration. I know it was a slow start, and we've seen sort of an annoying amount of Josh Kelly and also Sony Michel, especially near the goal line, but he doesn't need 20 touchdowns, Austin Eckler, to return value. He needs maybe more like 10, and his current pace is well above 10.
Yeah. Really quickly in looking at this, there are a few people that don't even make our top 10. If you noticed, inside the top 10, Jonathan Taylor was not one of the running backs listed. And that's a little indicative of the way that this, I mean, obviously the season has started out really tough now dealing with an ankle injury, but that's a big fall for him to go from the number 1 overall pick in this and what seemed like the safest pick over Christian McCaffrey. Like he was the safe guy.
Yeah. I think the question with Jonathan Taylor is the health, right? We don't know. Stephania just said, sounds like there's a chance not Thursday night.
Yep.
Sounds like there's a chance as a potential 2-game absence for Jonathan Taylor, not to mention the possibility that whatever he's dealing with in the ankle, plus whatever he was dealing with last week on the toe, could bother him a bit going forward.
Yeah,
right.
My understanding is the toe is non-issue. So,
Okay.
Yeah,
So at least the ankle could bother him going forward. But that offensive line has some good pieces, no doubt, but it's not what it used to be.
It's not. Like, I think that's the biggest surprise to me is seeing them in competition looking just not good at all. And where was Jonathan Taylor drafted last year on average?
My guess, I know he went in the first round of the War Room like Teddy Bruschi, so my guess would be somewhere around like 12.
Yeah, because remember he had that slow, like for the first 4
was a
weeks
slow
we
start.
didn't know him,
First one was really slow, yeah.
But I just don't think we're gonna get.
It's just odd though
with
because
this
he's
team.
getting the snaps that you want
Right.
from him this
The
year up until the
volume.
injury. And he had one great week in week 1, no doubt. But back-to-back weeks where he gets 20 plus carries, or sorry, this past week he gets 20 carries, 42 yards. Like you would
there's
never
nowhere
expect
for
that
him
from
to go.
Jonathan Taylor.
I got 2 more players I want to talk about when we can wrap it up. Najee Harris. You talk about getting a ton of volume. He's been a running back that's been getting a ton of volume.
Yeah,
and
passing
has
game work is
not done anything with it.
Yeah.
Now, Kenny Pickett comes in under center. Is that going to change some
I
things?
can't wait to see. I don't know.
But they have
it
some
worse.
tough defenses that they're coming up here the next couple of games too.
Hardest watch in the NFL right now,
Yeah.
Steelers.
Yeah.
Hardest watch. I mean, they're not creative. They're not effective. They have talent. Like, who wouldn't want a receiving group of Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, and George Pickens? Doesn't that sound like a great
Sounds
1-2-3 punch,
amazing.
right? Najee Harris,
And a
high
running
fire
back
move.
at Najee Harris, right?
I mean,
Tight
it's
end.
a tough
Like,
watch right now.
yeah.
Like, I know the Steelers are, they are an old school mentality team, so they're going to want to try to establish that run and be physical and all that. But it might be time for them to change their stripes because they're 1-3 and in great peril of putting that streak of at least
Well, I think we saw
500
the
for
start
Mike
of that.
Tomlin.
We saw the start of that with the switch at
Major
quarterback.
disappointment though major for Najee. Major disappointment.
Last one from me, and I think that this is not just because I'm a Lions fan, but I think Amon-Ra St. Brown, with the target share that he has gotten within this Lions offense and the way that they unfortunately give up so many points,
It's awesome.
they're going to have to keep throwing. So he's a guy that,
Tremendous value.
easily.
Tremendous. The only thing on Amon-Ra is just that he's obviously out right now, and it's too early to know for this week. But if this becomes a scenario where he is unavailable for 3 games in the first 7 weeks, then all of a sudden it's.
Let me ask you a question. This is just hypothetical.
Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yes.
That's the answer.
Amon-Ra St. Brown. Would you rather, if you knew that he would be out 3 games, I'm just making this up.
Yep.
But when he came back, you get exactly what you got before.
Yeah.
Or would you rather that he comes back after missing a game or maybe 2, roll the dice, and you're not sure, and it could be up and down, boom, bust?
I would shut him down because where I drafted Amon-Ra St. Brown, I likely have another wide receiver, although not doing as well as him, that I could probably trust. I want him to be healthy for the rest of the season.
And their bye week is in week 6.
Right.
It just seems if it's at all close, it just seems too pragmatic for a guy who's I
don't necessarily think that he's going to be out that long, but it's like in your mind,
Well,
fantasy
one more
wise,
week, right?
Right. It could be.
Yeah.
So in your mind, fantasy wise, I'm just saying, people don't panic because if you get back the guy that you've had for the start of the season, what more could you want?
Last thing, if you're the Lions, not that Amon-Ra's not incredible, but you hung 45 on Sunday without him.
Exactly.
Right? Like, unless Amon-Ra can play defensive tackle this Sunday, you might just want to sit him out.
We might need him back there in the secondary. He might need to become a 2-way player for us, in all honesty. I would take Amon-Ra St. Brown right now over Devontae Adams. I think by the time that we get to the end of the season, with the way that things are working out, and I know it's crazy because it's Devontae Adams and you're talking about the Raiders and the AFC West, but with the way I'm trying to disassociate the garbage part of the Detroit Lions with the fact that they have to throw so much to keep up this year.
Yeah, it's That's a tough one. How about Jamar Chase? Who'd you rather have between him and Amon-Ra?
I would definitely rather have Amon-Ra St. Brown because Jamar Chase's target share is not nearly as equivalent. I would rather have the boom bust games of Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
I don't think are enough for me. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to have more fantasy points and average more fantasy points per game than Jamar Chase at the end of the year.
I think this probably boils down to what I probably sounded annoyingly boring about during the preseason, where it's like they're all kind of the same, right? Like Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, Amon-Ra St. Brown. If you have any of them, like you're absolutely unequivocally starting them every single Sunday if they're healthy. And like at the end of the year, if we ran 100 simulations, maybe who was the highest scoring of those three? Maybe Amon-Ra is the highest scoring in 30, and Devontae is the highest scoring in 34, and Jamar Chase is the highest scoring in 36, right? Like it's kind of equivalence here. But it's an interesting question.
I think if I had to pick, so what's going to, it's the thing that's going to tip the scale for me. It's that it's a every week must win fantasy. Like if you look at it as a week-long game, the problem with the others is the boom or the bust. Mm-hmm. Because when you don't get it from Jamar Chase, that might be the thing that does you in. Believe me, I am appreciating this right now. It's on my leagues with players who I've expected to perform well, who've had dud weeks, but then have risen back and had boom weeks. Yeah. If I can get consistency, that is something I can count on. Maybe it's going to give me the edge in winning week out. Because I care at the end of the season, I don't care if somebody had 15 more fantasy points. I care if I won more head-to-head matchups.
Yep. I still think, and I might be wrong here, I still think I like T. Higgins more than Jamar Chase with from a weekly perspective. He brings just as many fantasy points. By the time we get to the end of the year, they're going to be right there with each other in spite of that gap. So
my final thought is Cooper Kupp.
He's just great.
That's my final thought.
What are you going to do, man?
I have nothing else to add other than Cooper Kupp.
And by the way, at the end of last night's game, he's so gracious and talks about how they as a team need to be better.
Yeah.
I mean, Cooper Kupp.
I was down by 15 in the matchup with Cooper Kupp left last night, and I kind of had some hope. I was like, maybe. So you're telling me there's a chance? Okay.
Yeah.
Possible.
If Cooper Kupp is in your lineup, you always have the Monday Night Miracle available to you. That's going to do it for us today on Tuesday. Shout out to our buddy Eric Moody for hanging out with us. Again, follow him on Twitter at Eric N. Moody. We will be back tomorrow with our friend Liz Loza talking rankings. Talking everything you need to know, get you ready for week 5, and look at that flow.
We will be shaving Daniel's hair.
Hey now.
That's a gift right there.
What kind of shampoo do you use? I think I'm going to send you for a shampoo ad.
I use Head and Shoulders.
Yeah, look at that.
You're basically the Patrick Mahomes of fantasy football.
Well, I'm the Patrick Mahomes of hair football. I'll tell you that much right now. All right.
We're still going.
That's going to do it for us today. We love you guys. We'll see you back on Wednesday. Later.